Subaru's Outback isn't an SUV, but offers most of what that class of vehicle provides in a package that's a little more rugged than your average jacked-up 4x4 estate. After all, its permanent symmetrical all-wheel drive system will keep you going long after other off-road estates have waved the white flag. This improved, more efficient version of the 4th generation design is based solely around a 2-litre diesel power plant that you can now choose to match with slick Lineartronic automatic transmission. It's also well equipped, more efficient and smarter inside and out. Overall, a rare choice, but for the right kind of buyer, potentially a very good one. The Subaru Outback. With a history going all the way back to 1996, it was the original off-road orientated family estate with an image that, at the turn of the century, placed it comfortably alongside big Volvos and Land Rovers as a preferred choice for the tweed-jacketed country set. In more recent times, it's been a rarer sight on our roads, something Subaru's importers would like to change with the introduction of this much improved 4th generation version. The Japanese brand reckons that this was the original crossover vehicle. Now, this may be true, but the way the market now understands crossovers as Nissan Qashqai-like SUV-styled family hatches with little off-road ability doesn't fit the Outback's remit at all. With a core market following in wild parts of Australia, America and Asia, it has to be pretty capable in the rough, or at least pretty capable for something that remains a conventional estate car. In this 4th generation guise, it continues to be. The Outback's based almost entirely on Subaru's legacy tourer estate, though it offers a tougher look and extra ground clearance, both key ingredients for the emerging market niche of capable all-wheel drive estates, lately popularised by cars like Audi's all-road models and Volvo's XC70. It was in response to competition of this sort that Subaru launched the 4th generation version of this Outback in 2010, making it bigger and more capable than before. It wasn't enough, partly because the automatic gearbox most buyers wanted couldn't be matched with the diesel power most of them needed. Hence the need for this car. The smarter, more efficient and much improved Mark IV model launched here in the autumn of 2013. Let's try it. Paul Hogan of Crocodile Dundee fame was the face that originally launched this car back in the 90s, and sure enough, it's easy to imagine his grizzled face behind the wheel of one of these, pounding across the Australian Outback, or at least amongst some of its bumpy but passable trails. A 50mm increase in ground clearance over the standard legacy tourer estate on which this model is based means 200mm of fresh air beneath the bodywork. Not enough to tackle anything too rocky, but certainly better than pretend off-roaders like Toyota's RAV4, as well as more similarly orientated 4x4 estate car rivals like Skoda's Octavia Scout or the Audi A4 Allroad. In any case, cars like this one aren't bought to tackle the Rubicon Trail, but to deal with muddy cart tracks and slippery back roads with or without heavy trailers in tow, all of which is well within the Outback's remit thanks to its symmetrical all-wheel drive system. Now, this usually splits power 50-50 between front and rear axles in manual models, or 60-40 if you've gone for the Lineartronic CVT automatic version. But it's also intelligent enough not to simply leave it at that, instead cleverly shunting power around to the wheel that can best use it in any given slushy situation. In short, it's better off the tarmac than a car of this kind has any right to be. Which wouldn't be much good were this Subaru to be a poor companion on-road, where of course it'll spend nearly all of its time. Fortunately, it isn't. There are still sharper drivers' cars in this class, but changes to the front and rear suspension have certainly given this Outback a stiffer, more controlled, more engaging ride in a car that now offers a little more driver feedback over twistier roads. Here you really get the benefit of the low centre of gravity offered by the deep placement of the Boxer engine up front. Under the bonnet, well, this wouldn't be a Subaru without a so-called boxer power plant plumbed in up front, the name designating a unique engine layout that sees the banks of cylinders punching out at each other like pugilists. It's supposed to be a better balanced and thus smoother configuration, but what you'll probably notice most is the distinctive and rather endearing thrum that's even common to this diesel version. A unit that takes you to 60 from rest in 9.7 seconds on the way to 120 miles an hour. Diesel is the only choice for Outback buyers these days, and there's just this single 150 PS 2-litre unit on offer. You can at least, however, now match it to automatic transmission, which at last for Subaru creates the diesel power auto gearbox combination that most buyers in this segment now want. That gearbox is Subaru's well-respected Lineartronic CVT unit, designed to work in tandem with the power band characteristics of the diesel engine. And you can give it a particularly good workout by switching into 7-speed manual mode and using the paddle shifters provided behind the steering wheel. You might expect the Lineartronic option to be better suited to Outback buyers likely to be mainly limiting themselves to the tarmac. In fact, you'd be wrong in that, for this transmission has actually been optimised to be as at home on Snowdon as it is in Surbiton, thanks to an active torque split system that applies power to the road through all four wheels. In my experience, it's just as effective as the manual gearbox setup, which channels the symmetrical all-wheel drive through a centre differential, then coupled to a limited slip differential. But whichever gearbox you favour, off the beaten track, you'll find that useful approach and departure angles of 18.6 and 23 degrees will certainly help. Having said all of that, well, I don't want you to get me wrong, this is no rock crawler. For a start, there's no low-range gearbox for that kind of thing. But for simply dealing with field tracks, towing, or getting somewhere icy or muddy, this Subaru will suit many owners perfectly. The links between this Outback and the legacy Tourer model it's based upon are obvious to the casual observer, but then so also are the differences. The cars share the same combination of front grille and sculpted bonnet, with large striking headlamps that stretch up and around into the wings, here with a smart gloss black finish. Where the Outback goes its own way is lower down, with the metallic borders for these now larger round fog lights and this chunky skid plate as chin protection. Extended wheel arches and further body colour protection along the sills also emphasise the car's off-road credentials, as does its higher 200mm ground clearance. If your memory of Outback models goes back some way and you're not familiar with the 4th generation version of this car, then you might be surprised to find it a little bigger than expected. The Mark IV model took a step up in size from its predecessor, as Subaru chased after buyers who might be considering cars like Volvo's XC70 or even maybe Audi's much pricier A6 Allroad. Now that's something you particularly notice when taking a seat in the back. Here there's reasonably comfortable room for 3, assuming that you're not using this centre folding armrest with its integral cup holders. The roominess is thanks in part to the way that the backs of these front seats have a concave shape to allow for extra knee room. It will also help that this rear bench can, if required, be reclined by up to 20 degrees to more easily while away longer journeys. Up front, well, there'll be few surprises for those familiar with the brand. To properly compete with prestige rivals, a far more upmarket cabin was necessary, and though the original Mark IV model offered a step forward in that respect, it still looked a little plasticky alongside the best of the competition. Hence the effort put into this revised version, which gets smart carbon effect accents on the doors, metallic accents for the centre console and the dashboard, and a more ergonomic steering wheel design. There are classier instrument dials too, separated by a neat 3.5-inch colour liquid crystal display. It all represents a useful step forward, and though not everyone will like the fitment of an electronic parking brake, it is at least now more conveniently sited and frees up extra space for cabin stowage. And there's certainly plenty of that with a double-decker centre console that can swallow up to 22 CDs and incorporates a 12-volt power supply, as well as USB and aux-in sockets. You can fit a further 31 CDs in the glove box, and there are nice touches like a central overhead sunglasses storage box and door pockets large enough to hold a 500 millilitre plastic bottle. As for luggage space, well, the larger body introduced to 4th generation models has pretty much shifted this car upper class, where the old Mark III Outback's carrying capacity would have been on a par with something like an Audi A4 all-road. This generation Outback has basically as much room as the German brand's much pricier A6 all-road model, and with the seats folded more than the other class favourite Volvo's XC70. Expect to find 526 litres of space with all the seats in place, and 1,677 litres when you flip these useful levers by the tailgate to lower the split-folding bench. I like the little touches too, like the useful underfloor compartment that provides you with somewhere where you can store the parcel shelf when not in use. Expect to pay about £30,000 for your Outback in manual gearbox form. There's a £1,500 premium to find if you want the Lineartronic automatic. There's only one trim level and of course the single estate body style. These days you only get a single 2-litre diesel engine option too. There simply isn't the demand for the petrol-powered Outback models the importers used to offer here. In terms of Subaru's own lineup, that kind of outlay pitches this car in at about £1,000 above top spec, comparably equipped four-wheel drive diesel-powered versions of the slightly less capable Legacy Tourer and the slightly more capable Forester. So how does that kind of pricing leave this car looking in its target market? Well, to answer that, we all need to be agreed on what that target market is. You could conceivably compare this Outback to all kinds of RAV4, Honda CR-V or Land Rover Freelander style compact soft-roading SUVs, most of which would save you around £2,000 or so if ordered with a comparable spec and a similarly powerful diesel engine. But that kind of comparison isn't really valid here. Subaru has designed its Forester model to more closely target that particular segment. No, this car more closely targets the niche market sector for off-road orientated versions of conventional estate cars. It's a sector that offers you a number of interesting options in the £25,000 to £35,000 bracket. At the affordable end of that spectrum lie slightly less capable contenders like Skoda's Octavia Scout and Vauxhall's Insignia Country Tourer. At the expensive end lie cars that are either clever, like Peugeot's diesel-electric 508 RXH Hybrid, or more prestigiously badged, like Volvo's XC70. This Subaru lies in between these two extremes and is probably unchallenged as the most capable car of this kind that money can buy. It's certainly a far better off-road choice than the two German contenders you could also consider for the same kind of £30,000 budget, Volkswagen's Passat Alltrack and Audi's A4 Allroad. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is an Outback that you really want, then you're going to need to know what's included for the outlay required. And the answer is quite a lot, which is something that you need to take into account if you're making comparisons with apparently cheaper rivals. All Outback models come with 17-inch gunmetal coloured alloy wheels, silver roof rails, power folding heated mirrors, a roof spoiler, UV protected glass, a power sliding glass sunroof, self-leveling automatic HID headlamps with washers, rain sensing wipers and front fog lamps. Inside, you can expect to find dual-zone automatic air conditioning, a 6-speaker stereo system with USB and aux-in compatibility, Bluetooth phone compatibility, a trip computer, a VGA center display with rear parking camera, heated sports seats with power adjustment for the driver, and a leather-trimmed multifunction steering wheel from which you can operate cruise control. There are really only two main options, leather trim and satellite navigation. As for safety provision, well, that's been engineered into this car from the start, hence the 5-star Euro NCAP safety rating. The front bumper, for example, is fabricated with impact-absorbing materials to reduce pedestrian impact injuries. Then there are seats designed to reduce whiplash injuries, a steering column structure designed to protect your knees, and collapsible foot pedals there to reduce the likelihood of foot and lower leg injuries. More conventional safety kit runs to Isofix child seat fastenings and twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus a whole range of electronic features that work with the symmetrical all-wheel drive system to try and ensure that you're never going to be in an accident situation in the first place. So there's traction control, 4-sensor 4-channel ABS braking, and the latest version of Subaru's clever VDC Vehicle Dynamics Control System. Now this not only handles stability issues and limits body roll, but also operates the emergency brake assist system, assessing the need for braking assistance in any given extreme situation. As a result, Subaru claims near identical braking performance on both wet and dry surfaces. Usually, a more capable car is a more expensive one to run. You'd certainly expect that the permanent symmetrical four-wheel drive system of this Outback would exact more of a fuel and emissions penalty than would be found on most other rivals, cars that trundle around in two-wheel drive most of the time, with all-wheel traction only being introduced when needed. Thanks to enhancements like an EGR exhaust gas recirculator, which alone improves efficiency by 12%, the figures suggest otherwise. Take the 47.9 miles to the gallon combined cycle fuel figure and 155 grams per kilometre CO2 reading you'll get from a manual diesel-powered Outback model. The Lineartronic automatic diesel version I have here manages 44.8 miles to the gallon and 166 grams per kilometre. In both cases, the returns aren't too far off those achieved by less capable rivals like Vauxhall's Insignia Country Tourer, Volkswagen's Passat Alltrack and the Audi A4 Allroad. And they're also pretty similar to the kind of figures you'd return with a comparable RAV4 or Freelander-style compact soft-roading SUV. What else? Well, there's the peace of mind of a 5-year, 100,000-mile warranty, plus with service intervals at 12,000 miles, the Outback shouldn't prove too arduous to own. If you really don't want an SUV, but really need one, there are plenty of plush, jacked-up four-wheel drive estate cars that can claim to offer a realistic alternative. Yet few of them would last long if regularly used uphill, down dale on the average rutted farm track. Here's an exception. This improved 4th generation Outback may not be able to replace a fully fledged off-roader for those living halfway up a mountain peak, but for a vehicle of this kind it really is extraordinarily capable. Previous Outback models were just as good, but weren't really large or plush enough to compete against the Volvos and Audis that represent this car's most natural competition. Crucially, they also lacked the diesel automatic drivetrain combination that most buyers now want. With all of that put right, this Subaru now makes more sense than ever before.